much for joining us on NewsX World. With that perspective, we leave it there and shift our focus. U.S. President Donald Trump has signaled optimism over what he describes as potential trade agreements with key Asian partners like India, Japan and South Korea. In a News Nation town hall, Trump said that he was in no rush to finalize deals, emphasizing that the United States is currently in a position of strength due to the reciprocal tariffs his administration has imposed. Let's listen in to what Trump had to say in the News Nation town hall.
Could set those deals tomorrow and do away with negotiating, but we're negotiating with South Korea, we're negotiating with Japan, we're negotiating with a lot of different, many, India is a very big, they want to make a deal so badly.
Okay.
I'm not telling anything out of school. We're going to make great deals for America instead of bad.
Well, I understand you have a deal with South Korea, Japan, and India. You already got it. When are you announcing it?
Well, we have potential deals with them, yeah. But I'm in, okay, I'll tell you this. I'm in less of a hurry than you are. We are sitting on the catbird seat. They want us. We don't need...
Meanwhile, Trump's remarks come against the backdrop of a new Commerce Department report showing that the U.S. economy has shrunk by 0.3% in the first quarter, with the surge in imports driven by businesses trying to get ahead of sweeping tariffs. Despite the economic slowdown, Trump defended his trade policy, suggesting it is already yielding benefits and predicted a boom as more companies begin relocating operations back to the U.S. For now, Trump appears confident that the pressure created by his tariff policies is pushing trade partners towards the negotiating table. But he made it clear that he is prepared to wait for the right terms. Joining me on the broadcast is Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, President of the CDE-PR. Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, I want to understand from your perspective, how confident should Donald Trump be at this point in time when he says that businesses will relocate to the United States of America?
See, fundamentally, the U.S. economy is a strong economy, but if we put the premise on relocating manufacturing back to U.S., and by business, President Trump is specifically talking about manufacturing. Clearly, with the labor cost in U.S., U.S. is not competitive unless the U.S. consumers are prepared to pay more for made in U.S. Products. Or the alternative is that the U.S. workers charge the same amount that Asian workers do. Now, neither of them seem to be a probable outcome. And therefore, for the few industries that we have looked at and analyzed, it has seemed quite difficult for them to relocate back to U.S. unless there is significant amount of robotics involved. In the short term, we don't see those kind of robotics being developed, and therefore we will be a little worried about the presumption that manufacturing will move back to US. It's going to take a lot of time for that to happen. US is good in things like technology, things like services, which already exist in US. So the big techs are already in US, and that's where it generates high quality employment. And that's what the US economy is about. Trying to reshape that and restructure that in a very short period of time, while looking at the fundamentals not supporting that transition, is a very difficult proposition. So I don't think that this is going to work out in any significant manner. Obviously, there will be small transitions that will happen. There will be some manufacturing that will move to US, but it will not be a very broad-based, widespread movement that will happen. It'll end up backfiring because it'll kind of impact the supply chains. And then the supply chains will go back into the same foundation that it is right now. So it'll be kind of a circular movement that will happen without really any significant advantage to US. US, on the other hand, is a powerhouse in terms of new technologies such as AI, quantum, and so on. It might have helped if US had doubled down on where its strengths are rather than trying to move towards an area where it does not have strengths and disappoint its own workers, because they can only have a long-term job as long as their salaries are given a cut, which they will not agree to.
Okay, Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, I also want to understand from you your thoughts on some of the current trade deals that the US is undertaking, especially vis-a-vis India and some of the other countries in South Asia.
So obviously the details of the trade deals are not available, but the manner in which these trade deals are being looked at is in terms of the quantum of imports that will happen from US. It's not just in terms of tariffs, it's about how much of liftoff will happen from the US economy. It's pretty similar to the kind of deal that happened with Japan in the 80s, where Japan promised a few $100 billion to be imported from US. Subsequently, there was a similar deal with China, which was not honored by China in terms of lifting an X amount of dollars from the US economy, because every economy needs to be competitive. So if they end up exporting or importing from US goods which are high cost, that's not going to work out for them, and in the long term it will be detrimental. So essentially the deals will therefore look at areas where US is competitive, such as, let's say, energy, where they can bring down the price and be at the same level as the others who are selling energy in the global markets. And therefore that could be possible dimensions in which the India-US trade could go towards, where more amount of India's energy requirements could be imported from US. And that way the $40 billion gap or $50 billion gap that we have in terms of trade deficit between US and India could possibly be plugged in.
Okay, and lastly, Dr. Bhattacharya, I want to understand from your perspective, how exactly do you think Donald Trump will now explain to the people of the United States of America why exactly there's a slump in the US GDP? He says that he has a better grasp on the economy, being a businessman himself, but he's really trying to now shift the blame on Biden rather than perhaps in a way accepting or reassuring the people that this sort of an outcome was expected due to the tariffs and the deals that are yet to be formalized.
So that's in the realm of politics, and I think Trump is probably a better politician than a business person, and I'm sure he'll be able to find a good reason to put to his people. But if you look at the string of promises he has made, including peace being brought in the US, in the Russia-Ukraine war, the string of crashes, air crashes that have happened since the time he took over, there seems to be a string of failures that are there, but it hasn't really touched him. Of course, his ratings have fallen to one of the lowest in terms of the history of newly elected presidents. But I'm sure he'll be able to manage an explanation for the people, because he has been giving explanations. Unless he gets a quick win in, let's say, bringing peace to Ukraine, that will be a big job done if he's able to pull it off, or he's able to turn around the economy. And if in the next quarter the US does not go into another recession, because if it goes into degrowth in the next quarter, then technically the US economy will be in recession, which also impacts their cost of borrowing, their ratings, and so on and so forth. If he manages to avoid that in the next quarter, then he will have a good story to tell the people that he's turning the US economic ship around. But again, as I said, that's in the realm of politics. I'm sure he will do a good job in terms of the narration, but clearly the last 4 months has been challenging for the US government.
All right, Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, thank you so much for joining us on NewsX World with that perspective. We leave it there and shift our